The sport of bobsleigh was conceived before the turn of the century in St. Moritz, Switzerland, when English tourists attached two sleds together. The sport got its name in the early years when teams at the start would bob forward, hence the name bobsleigh. In 1995, however, bobsled is a high-tech sport with the finest equipment available and the finest athletes in the world. Those athletes have gathered here in the Olympic village of Lillehammer, Norway, and they're getting ready for a brand new season on the Corel FIBT World Cup Bobsleigh Series. All of the best are on hand, including the defending World Cup champion driver Pierre Luders and two-time world champion Christoph Langen of Germany. Their seven-time Olympic medalist Wolfgang Hoppe. And maybe the most famous bobsledder today is the Prince of Monaco, Prince Albert. The sleds are getting ready for a brand new season, and before we bring you the first event in a new season, let's take a look back at the year just passed. The 94-95 campaign opened up in North America in Calgary, and it was the hometown driver Pierre Luders of Canada sending a message early with the World Cup two-man win. Well, things got tough for everyone when the tour moved to Germany, but the Germans fared well. This was Hoppe with a big win in Winterberg. Trouble for the Americans at the World Cup finale in St. Moritz. That four-man bobsled had just one man in it and didn't even make it down to the bottom of the track. Reto Goci of Switzerland, the Olympic silver medalist, did fine in his hometown, taking first place in the World Cup two-man event in St. Moritz. And in the World Cup finale four-man competition, it was Dirk Wiese of Germany. He entered just 3 events and won 2 of them last season. But when all was said and done, it was the Canadians. By virtue of great attendance more than anything and top 5 finishes all along, Pierre Luders wins the two-man World Cup, the four-man World Cup, and the overall World Cup title. Things then shifted to Winterberg, Germany, a huge crowd on hand rooting for the home team. The World Championships, the Weltmeisterschaften, and Christoph Langen took his second ever two-man World Championship. In the four-man, there's that name again, Wolfgang Hoppe. We said he's won 7 Olympic medals, also a closet full of World Championship medals. And they just keep getting sweeter. So taking a look at the standings from last season's Corel World Cup Series, it was close. Pierre Luders by just 1 point over Reto Goci in the two-man competition. As for four-man, Luders takes it over Great Britain's Mark Tout and then Dirk Wiese. And finally, the combined. The overall standings show Pierre Luders completing the Triple Crown with the victory over Goci and Guter Huber of Italy. Well, that's the season past, and now the sliders are getting ready to go for the 95-96 campaign. It all starts here in Lillehammer, but actually, things got going under the hot sun of Monte Carlo a few months back. The weather was beautiful, and bobsledding in the short-sleeved shirts, who could ask for more? Prince Albert, the ambassador of the sport of bobsleigh, was at his home, of course, in Monte Carlo, and at home with all his bobsleigh mates.
I think it's exciting for small countries, and it's an opportunity for them to go after the big nations on an out-of-season championship like this. But I think that's probably where the sport is growing, is that everyone's training better and having more opportunities to compete against each other, and I think it's, for the overall development of our sport, I think it's wonderful.
The concept for this annual World Push competition is rather simple. The bobsleigh team simulates their start of the first 50 meters and tries to get under the bar, and if they do it incorrectly, the old disqualification will be handed their way. No one doubts that the start is the most important aspect in the sport of bobsledding, and it has been the Americans over the past few years that have dominated this event in Monte Carlo. In this year's two-man competition, Brian Liturgy and Robert Olson from USA Sled number 1 came through with a super start time of 5.41 to take the two-man event. They win it over fellow Americans Tuffy Latour and William Stolpe, while Sean Olsen and Lenny Paul of Great Britain were third. Well, the crowd waited anxiously as their hero took to the sled. Prince Albert of Monaco, Monaco's sled number 1 in the four-man competition. Albert, though consistently not getting the great starts in the sport of bobsled, has certainly got the great energy and the great desire to still compete in this sport despite all of his other obligations. And the determination shows on the face of the prince. The crowd appreciated the efforts, and that appreciation was returned right back to them. But down to the competition again, it came down to the United States. The sled driven by Brian Liturgy with his crew of John Casper, William Stolpe, and Robert Olson had a sensational 5.45 push time in the final heat to win the competition. It was high fives all around and a big day for the red, white, and blue of the United States on the shores of the French Riviera. Great Britain and the Czech Republic tied for second place, but for the USA it was a wonderful start to the upcoming season.
It's a good way to start out the season, give a lot of encouragement and enthusiasm for the rest of the athletes too.
Congratulations to the United States and mostly to the folks of Monaco who each year put on a great show at the World Push Championships. Well, under much colder conditions in Lillehammer, Norway, the opening ceremonies are setting the stage for the first World Cup bobsleigh event of the brand new season.
In our world, engineering and imagination know no boundaries.
In central Norway. The conditions for this World Cup opener, 2 degrees above zero is the air temperature, track temperature 2 below, very little wind, and just some light snow under cloudy skies. Norwegian bobsled driver Anders Christensen tells us about the track.
It's a modern track, so it's fairly safe to go down. Most pilots can come down. Not a lot of crashes in Lillehammer because the exits are pretty long, so you don't have to be exact on just to get out okay. But if you lose a lot of time if you don't do it the right way. So it separates fairly good, but it's fairly easy.
Canadian driver Chris Laurie has been at it in this sport for over a decade. You gotta wonder what keeps him going.
The World's being in Calgary this year certainly has helped in my decision to come back again this year. Right now I'm just taking it 1 year at a time. It's fun though because I keep on challenging myself physically, and I think that this year at the age of 33, I had my best start times in Calgary during selection. Once I make my decision that it's over, that's it. You know, that's something I'll never be able to come back to for the rest of my life.
These are highlights of the two-man competition here at the Corel World Cup Bobsleigh Series season opener in Lillehammer. Chris Laurie in the two-man with his brakeman Ben Hindle. They were in 5th place entering the second heat. Laurie, a two-time Olympian. He has a couple of World Cup victories under his belt, but most of them in the four-man competition. And as Laurie would cross the finish line here in Lillehammer, his second heat time was 54.58. That was good enough to keep him in first place for the time being.
Well done.
You hear head coach Hans Hilterbrand of the Canadian team saying well done and mentioning a good bottom part of the track. As we see the rough curve 13, well, Laurie engineers it quite well. So the total time for the two runs is 1:48.39 for Chris Laurie and Canada 2. The USA's Brian Scheimer is a former World Cup four-man champion, now seeing success in the two-man.
I don't know. I think maybe this year we might be a little bit stronger in the two-man. Sled development continues with the Bodine sleds. They're getting better. We just seem to be working a little bit more now on the two-man, and we've gotten them a little bit better.
Both the driver Scheimer and his brakeman Randy Jones were former American college football players. So many great athletes in the sport of bobsledding, not just football players, but in particular track stars, as it takes a lot of strength and speed to start that heavy sled. Scheimer and Jones were in fourth place after the first heat. The sleds go in reverse order in heat number 2, so we'll be seeing the third, second, and first place sleds upcoming. But for Brian Scheimer and Randy Jones, it was a very good second heat time of 54.41. Now the Americans, as we saw in Monaco, are known for their explosive starts. Here, the four legs of the two competitors driving forward and the smooth load. For Scheimer and Jones, 1:48.17 for the two heats kept them atop the leaderboard with three more competitors to come. Germany number 1, Christoph Langen and his brakeman Kai-Uwe Kohlert. It was just 1 year ago that Langen put in a sensational effort at the World Championships in Winterberg. Langen won his second World Championship and didn't even make it close as he blew away the rest of the field. But now it's a brand new season and Langen kicking things off in third place after the first heat. He led Scheimer by 0.02 of a second entering this heat, so he could ill afford to make a mistake, something which Langen rarely does anyway. At this point in the track, speeds are in upwards of 110 kilometers an hour. And across the finish line, in a sport measured to the 100th of a second, Christoph Langen's two-run time had tied the American sled which preceded him. Langen is always one of the toughest starters, and his 5.00 start time was the best of the day, as you see he and his teammate Kohlert just driving that sled forward and on its way down the track. 1:48.17 for the two heats. The Americans and Germans at this point were tied for first place. This is Germany sled number 2, Sepp Dastaller and Thomas Platzer. Dostaller's 5.02 start already put him at a disadvantage. He's not one of the most well-known of the many great German drivers, but he has been a fixture with this program for several years. The Germans needed a time of 54.47 to move into first place, and they did so easily with a time of 54.33. So their hands are raised in apparent victory, but still one sled to go. And we take a look at these Germans coming out of curve 13. They hug the rail, but no damage done to the sled or the time. Two-heat time of 1:48.03. The final sled, World Cup champion Pierre Lueders. What do he and his teammate Jack Pick do for an encore this year?
Well, we still have a lot of things to work on. We didn't train together all summer on the push track, and I think it showed here with our timing being off on the hit, and that's the major part of our push that we're going to have to work on to get better.
The crowd seeing if Pierre Lueders can pick up where he left off last season. They had the smooth start time, and the sled was cruising down the center of the track. Waiting nervously at the bottom was Sepp Dostaller, the current leader, and he did not look confident of his chances of hanging on to that lead. Luder's still just 24 years old with still such a bright future in this sport. The World Cup overall champion, the World Cup 2- and 4-man champion from a season ago, and would he pick up where he left off? Yes, he does, and easily, as Pierre Lueders and Jack Pick turn in the best time of the first heat and the best time in the second heat as they win the Corel World Cup 2-man event of Lillehammer. A different start for him for Lueders as he drives from the blocks into the handles and gets that sled moving, almost overrunning the sled with his great size. The pair's starts weren't the best in the field today, but it was good enough for them to propel themselves to the victory. At the finish, Lueders a bit pensive as he takes in what this win means as he approaches a brand new season. And then it is time to celebrate with the high five to teammate Jack Pick and their victory by over a quarter of a second over Germany number 2 and Sepp Dostaller. The Americans and Germany number 1 tie for third.
Yeah, well, it was a good race. It was close, and you know, we had some problems at the start and on the driving, but you know, we managed to come out on top, so that's the important thing. There's a lot to do, but you know, the other teams, I'm sure, had their problems as well.
For me, it was like a revanche for Olympia, because I didn't good at the Olympics here in Lillehammer, and I was very happy about the second place.
The Canadian flag, the first to be raised during this young season. Well, it's a Norwegian tradition in winter, not just winter sports, but Norwegian costumes, Norwegian singing, and Norwegian fairy tales.
Ja, så hvit som det hvite sneen, og det røde har kveldssolen fått. Og den blå ga sin farve til breen, det Norge I rødt, hvitt og blått.
Choosing a movie just got a whole lot easier. Introducing